It would have been easier to lower them then. Not that it would have been easy. It would have been hard, but it's way harder now, given how much larger they are. Now, when he came to office in 2016, the Fed funds rate was 0.5% to 0.75%. The Fed had just raised interest rates from zero. There were 2 hikes before he came in. So when he came in, it was 0.5%. So he still had the benefit of all this cheap money, right? Now rates are what, 4.75? Yes, the Fed might cut a couple times, but they can't get anywhere near the really, really low rates that he enjoyed during the first term. So now we have a much bigger debt, much larger deficits, triple the size, and much higher interest rates that we have to pay to finance the deficits. Also, just to look at where gold was, because gold dropped today. Gold was only $1,200 an ounce when he took office. That was down from 1,900 in 2011. So gold was 37% below its peak from 5 years earlier. So it was kind of in a bear market. Now, we know it was in a building a base in a trading range. But of course, now, gold is making all-time highs. So you have a much more explosive situation than we had 8 years ago. We have much bigger debts and a much higher interest rate that we have to pay on it. And, we've got inflation that is already awoken from the dead and is, resurrected and now going to be a big problem. So where is all this optimism coming from? Well, a lot of it is coming from the fact that we got Elon Musk, right? I hear all this now all the time. Elon Musk, that's what's different. Elon Musk is going to come in here and cut government spending, right? He's going to slash government spending with his government efficiency department. Who knows how much that department's going to spend? And people think, oh, this time it's different. They're actually going to reduce the deficit substantially and really grow the economy. No, they're not. They're not even going to come close to doing that. First of all, even if Elon Musk could cut spending, discretionary spending, because he can't get into all the big ticket items that the president took off the chart, right? He can't touch Social Security, can't touch Medicare, probably not Medicaid, Obamacare, all that healthcare spending is off the table. He can't touch interest on the debt. That's just going up. And Trump wants to increase defense, so he can't make any cuts there. And so even if he was able to eliminate every other penny of government spending so that the only thing left for the government to do was to mail out the Social Security checks and the Medicare checks, but they didn't even pay the congressman, right? They eliminated the entirety of the government. You'd still have a deficit before they cut taxes, which of course we're not going to do. Maybe he can cut $100 billion a year, which would be amazing, but it's meaningless when you got a $7 trillion a year budget, right? It's a rounding error, what they can try to achieve. Politicians have been promising for years to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. They never do it. Yes, when Elon Musk bought Twitter, he made major cuts, right? He had the kitchen sink and he went and, he got rid of a lot of dead wood. That's because he owned the company. He could do what he wants. He's not going to be able to do that with the government. Any real spending cuts are going to have to get approved by Congress. They're not going to vote for it. Congress already has proven they won't cut spending. They'll talk about it, but they won't actually do it. I'm 61 years old. This game has been going on for a long time. I can't even remember the names of all the fancy plans and acts that they passed over the years to handle the deficit. And none of them have worked. That's why we have $37 trillion in debt, because none of these plans ever amounted to anything. There were never any cuts. To the extent that they ever agreed on cuts, they were cuts that were going to take place at some far off future date. They would always kick in 4 or 5 years into the future. And you know what would happen? Before we actually got to the date where they kicked off, they would cancel them because nothing is set in stone. One Congress can't bind some future Congress. This is also, they can pretend they've cut spending, right? And they can budget it, in their books to make the deficits look smaller. All the projections for the debt assume that the Trump tax cuts expire. Well, clearly they're not going to expire. They're going to get renewed. All this talk about efficiency in government, cutting government spending, rolling back government, this is all talk. We heard the same nonsense or rhetoric from Trump when he ran before in 2015, and they increased spending, increased warfare spending, increased welfare spending, blew up the deficit despite promises to pay off the national debt and all kinds of grandiose promises that Trump made on the campaign trail. He didn't keep any of those promises. All he did was cut taxes, but he didn't really cut taxes. He replaced income taxes with the inflation tax. A lot of the inflation that has shown up under Biden was born under Trump. Trump just doesn't have to accept any responsibility because the official measure didn't really shoot up until Biden was in office. So that was a lucky break for Trump. And that really helped him in his election because he could say, look how low inflation was when I was president. But it wasn't low, it was high. Money supply expansion, that's inflation. The money supply boomed under Trump. The consequences were delayed until Biden was in office, but he made the same mistakes. Now, sure, Biden, compounded the mistakes. Who knows what Trump would have done differently had he had a second term? The economy would be a mess if Trump was reelected, right? People want to pretend that it was great and just Biden screwed it up. It wasn't great. It was bad. It just got worse. And it's going to get worse under Trump. In fact, the only way it can get better is if it gets worse first. The problem is Trump didn't promise that. Trump didn't promise austerity. He didn't say, look, we have to pay the piper for decades of profligacy. We have to get our fiscal house in order. We got to tighten our belts. No, nobody has to tighten their belts. Let them out. We have all this debt that the taxpayers are on the hook for. And what is Trump saying? I'm going to cut your taxes. How can he cut your taxes? We got to pay for all this government. I start out by saying that spending cuts never happen, because every pork barrel spending plan has a constituency on the receiving end of that money. You're not going to get all the Republicans, even though they have the House, although the final votes haven't been counted, but I think it's like 95% probability that the Republicans have the House. They've got the Senate. But even if they have the House, you're not going to get all of the Republicans on board with significant spending cuts.